Welcome back to Inside the Lines. Happy Wednesday. Good night in basketball last night. Jake goes 3-0 on his props, still killing it. Big night. We have a lot of NFL things we want to get through quick before we hit basketball. A ton of basketball, though, that we can get through. Let's start with, before we get to that, actually, I have John with me. Finally got some NHL picks to come out tonight. A player prop that we like. Let me pull that up for us. All right, here we go. We're going to Washington with the Capitals here. What do we got?
Yeah, and apologies for the setup, y'all. I'm back home for Christmas right now, so I'm going to have a little Christmas tree in the background and I guess a camera looking up my nose. But we're still going to go out a pick today. We're going with Alex Ovechkin over 3.5 shots on goal. It's minus 130 on Hard Rock. So this is an act now. I think this is going to go way up. It's already on four shots on goal on Prize Picks. Ovechkin's currently on the longest streak of his career without scoring a goal. I believe it's at 13 games now, might be 14. But he's hit the shots on goal number in 4 of his last 5 games. I expect him to be shooting plenty today, and I expect his teammates to be feeding him plenty today because they all want this streak to be over and they want to stop hearing about it. The Islanders also allow the second most shots per game, shots against per game in the league. So we know the Caps are going to get plenty of shots off against them. So I really like Ovechkin over 3.5 shots on goal today.
Okay. And is this Hard Rock, this is the best value, or this is just what you bet on since we live in Florida?
That's a good question. Whenever there's a same, it's minus 130 on Hard Rock, minus 130 on DK as well. And whenever I see same odds, I like to go with the hometown book, Mackenzie.
Okay. Love to see that. Hometown heroes. That's all we are. All right. Thank you, John, for that. If you have NHL questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. John is happy to answer those. I'm going to take him out, bringing in the boys. Let's talk some basketball quick. A lot of NBA games today. A few games we have value on too, but please feel free to ask your questions on top of that. Let's start with Orlando. We like them to cover here, hosting Miami without a lot of key players.
Yeah, well, Jimmy Butler's out. So Miami's point differential with Butler going back to last season is plus 1.1 per game. But in the 23 games he misses, minus 3.7. So it's a nearly 5-point difference. The team three-point shooting goes from 36.5% to 33%. And Orlando's been awesome at home defensively, and they're 11-2 straight up against the spread. They got a plus 13-point differential, and they're allowing just 35% three-point shooting. So kind of like, and there's always that in-state rivalry that the younger players in Orlando actually get up for.
Right. Jake, I know we were talking about this before the show, but any other Orlando props you think would be worth targeting given how injured Miami is right now?
Yeah, I was looking at both Bronze and Paolo. Of course, Nick has the comments on that. I was leaning towards Paolo over 21.5 points there.
Okay.
I just don't with Miami's lack of depth, I think this could be a good matchup for him. But he's just you just never know what you're going to get from Paolo. That's the problem.
Steven, what are
40 and then 10 the next
We have 22 points. So whenever a team's fairly healthy, I think Fultz is the only one who's kind of on the injured list. He's obviously a guard. And we have a projection that is the same or above the line. That's good value because, again, sports books juice lines up because bettors tend to bet up, and there's a lower limit of 0 and there's technically no upper limit. So remember your statistics classes and those curves with the skew. Anyway.
Right. Whatever. I don't want to talk about school.
I'm seeing if the viewers drop after that statement.
All right, let's move over to another play we like here. Let's go to Trae Young, a prop here, going to Houston. He's had no business playing as well as he has been on the road. We think we have to regress back to the mean here.
Yeah, I was surprised to see a line of 3.5 with juice, with value, a positive value on the under, because I know historically, besides the playoff run against New York, he's not necessarily a great shooter on the road, but this year he's been phenomenal, shooting 38% and making almost 4 threes per game. So maybe that's what's resulting in this inflated line. But again, I think there's going to be a regression back to his historical numbers, which is more actually under 2, I think, threes, and not a high percentage. Houston's been phenomenal at home defensively this year. So they're 10-1 against spread because they're allowing 98 points per game. And that includes some games against Denver. And Dylan Brooks and Fred VanVleet have come in with a different attitude in terms of defending the guards. And historically, Trae Young, when he's faced Dylan Brooks, obviously these are when Brooks was on Memphis, he shot 28% on threes with a 1.7 average. And against VanVleet, so when VanVleet was in Toronto, he shot 30.6% with 1.6 threes. So I like the conditions get under.
All right.
So he has had good assist numbers against VanVleet, but really bad shooting numbers. So I saw that Nick S is on over 9.5 assists.
We have 9.6.
So he has double digits in 9 of the last 10 games against VanVleet in assists. So, but really bad shooting, like Steven said.
Mm-hmm.
And we do project an over on the assists.
Just one game where he's made 4 threes when facing VanVleet out of 14 games.
Plus one.
That's enough evidence.
Yeah.
We don't want to jinx it. We've said too much.
Makes too much sense. Cut it.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to a question quick before we go to our next play. Any value on Halliburton over his points and assist number? Maybe we can pull up OddsJam, figure out what that line is. I don't know if you guys know it. They're playing Charlotte.
Yeah, I know his points are 24.5 and assists was at 12.5.
Yeah.
So it's probably 37.5, I'm guessing.
Okay, he found 37.5. The under is minus 115 right now.
Yeah, we have 36 projected right now. Halliburton's been a little bit of I know he got a little banged up and missed a game, and he had a subpar game when they got killed by the Clippers. So he played 31 minutes and only had 8 and 11. But he hasn't had a huge scoring game since the Bucks game, and that was a huge scoring game at the end of the in-season tournament round, at the end of the game. So he hasn't been exploding offensively for most of the month of December.
Mm-hmm. Let's go to a player we do think will have a good night. DeMar DeRozan over 32.5 points, rebounds, and assists playing the Lakers tonight. I want to go to the model here because I have some questions for Austin Reeves. Personally.
Right. Okay. So, there's been a lot of talk of Chicago's fire sale, maybe even sending Zach LaVine to the Lakers. But DeMar DeRozan is from LA and he's, grew up big Lakers fan. He's averaged 32.5 points, rebounds, and assists in his career versus the Lakers. This year, he's playing without LaVine recently in this last 8-game stretch. He's been averaging 35 points, rebounds, and assists, which is where we have him at. So we have him only just doing what he's been doing pretty much for the month of December. In home games without LaVine, the last 12 home games, he's averaged 32.6 assists and 4.5 rebounds. So massive production there. So the Lakers defense, non-in-season tournament road games have been terrible. They're allowing 15 more points on the road than home this year. So kind of see that trend continuing. I didn't like it for Vucevic because Anthony Davis will probably shut him down, but I do like it for DeRozan.
Yeah, so it's actually moved to 31.5 in some places.
Oh, give me that.
Yeah.
Love that.
It was 31.5 this morning when I first looked it up, 32.5 when I closed the show, and now back down. Nice.
There are no lines for Austin Reeves yet, but I'll be damned if I'm not looking for them before game time. That is my guy. Him and Trey Murphy, I owe them a lot. Let's go back to that Charlotte, Indiana game quick. Looking at Miles Bridges, any value on his point total at 22.5?
No, we don't have him projected for much, only 18.8. But is everybody healthy? Because I know a lot of their forwards have been missing recently, but looks like Hayward, Brandon Miller have lines. So Bridges missed the last game because he wasn't allowed in Canada. But I don't know if that'll mean they feed him, especially. Looks like he hasn't been shooting well from 3 recently. He's only hit 4 of his last 23.
He's
I
due.
was at Hayward in this game. Can you click his game log? I know his line was between 16.5 some places, 17.5 some places. I mean, he is. I think he's an Indiana guy. He went to Butler.
Yeah, I went to Butler. Yeah, I think he is.
So, it's gonna be a good matchup for him. He when he's healthy, he's been shooting the ball really well lately.
Mm-hmm.
I see Nick S has a question about this Minnesota Philly game. Going over to that model. See, Melton's. I have problems with Melton right now. I mean, I've missed 5 of my Christmas picks. 2 of them are Philly players.
Yeah. It's like his minutes is dropping slightly. You know, he was a 30-plus minute player for a good stretch, and it's been in the 25 or less, or right around 25 in the last since you started picking his overs.
Yeah, and then also Ubre being back and getting more minutes. I think that also coincided with that.
Yeah, right now we have both projected for 28 minutes.
Yeah, so. When Ubre was out, Melton was feasting.
Right.
And he's kind of dug into that a little bit since he's been back.
I wonder if there's any value among those.
Should we go back
players.
to Tyrese? We're done with him. Don't say anything mean about him.
I'm just wondering if Ubre and Melton have disparity or opportunities to play against each other. Just Melton, no, it's 10.5 to 11.5. And Ubre is only on FanDuel at 13.5. So forget it.
Yeah, we got to see that play out. It's a little ugly. All right, I see. This is a good question. And then I promise we will go to college basketball after this. But we were talking about what Orlando players could benefit from Heat players being out. But what about Heat players? And I like the idea, Derek, that they were talking about Caleb Martin. I think he's been a sneaky person to bet on.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think Martin Hero had a pretty big game in his return, 25 points. So I would assume, it'll be evenly distributed among actually all the players. Even Jaime Jaquez could get more time. He played 30 minutes. He didn't get as many shots last game, but he played 30 minutes.
Okay, well, good to know, good to think about. All right, let's move into some of Jake's college props picks in general, which he has been killing, by the way, if I do say so myself. Let's go to a parlay here that we were talking about. Kind of explain what the logic is here with these. I'm assuming these are alt lines, right?
Yeah, these are both alt lines on DK. We all of our value today is teams that are about -10, -12 point favorites, and we have them winning by 20 in the Sims. So I like choosing two of those teams and knocking it down a little. The two of those teams are Rice and ECU. I think ECU is playing Delaware State, and Rice is playing who's right?
Prairie View.
Prairie View. I knew it was SWAC team. So we have both of those teams covering the spread easily. So you could just play those teams alone. But just to be a little safer, I like playing these alt line parlays. And we have both teams covering easily. ECU almost beat Florida in their last game. ECU has a lot of talent, and Rice is starting to play pretty well lately. So I like this parlay.
Mm-hmm. Let's move to a player prop you have in an actual marquee matchup, which is kind of big for you. I feel like you always target some of these smaller games, but going to UNC, going to Oklahoma. Oklahoma's 7 seed?
Yeah, it's number 17 in the country. It's number 7 versus number 11 in this game. Oklahoma's been one of the surprise teams this season, but I think Porter Moser is loyal, Chicago's old coach. He's just a heck of a coach. But this is a good matchup for Armando Bacot, just because while Oklahoma's been really good, they still don't have a ton of size. They have Hughley, but outside of him, they don't have a ton of size. So if he gets in foul trouble, I was on Bacot the other day, and I think his line was 28.5, and he had a stinker of a game. He had 6 turnovers. But he only shot the ball 4 times and 9 rebounds. But I think this is a better matchup for him. I think it's a bounce back game for him. Yeah. And I think we have around 24.8 or 25 points, rebounds, and assists. So not a ton of value, but he usually plays well in bigger games.
I like to buy low when you can. I like
exactly. It's moved 4 points, and the neutral site game. So we'll see.
All right, good stuff there. If you have any more basketball questions, feel free to ask them. I'm going to go let Jake cook in the chat here with all of you guys. I'm going to talk about some NFL movement for week 16 that we have noticed. Again, just trying to keep you guys informed through the week on how these lines are moving. A lot of major shifts going on this week. We started with the Colts open as 2.5-point favorites on the road going to Atlanta. Now Atlanta lays the 1 point here. Barely any movement on the total. Slate seemed to the over, but what's the reason for this, and do we like it at all?
I mean, this is they replaced Desmond Ridder, who's a red zone turnover machine, with Taylor Heineke, and maybe there's still some lingering concerns about Jonathan Taylor and Michael Pittman. I know our Fantasy Football Today guys don't rank players with any real questionable status. They have ranked Taylor as a top 10 running back, so he should be back, where Pittman is unranked by them. Model's got no value in this. We actually have 49.8% chance of both teams covering, so we'll have the same line as here. Heineke was not playing that well when he got the start at Arizona. I mean, he had a touchdown. He was 8 for 15, just 55 passing yards. So, but I think, this is a tough one to call because Arthur Smith, Atlanta's coach, is really under fire, and he's given Bijan Robinson fewer and fewer touches, it seems like, for some reason. So, yeah, again, no model value, but it explains the line that people have faith in Heineke over Ritter.
Mm-hmm. Let's move to another game with some massive flip. The Browns now 2.5-point favorites going to Houston. Houston open as 2.5-point favorites. So I'm assuming this is a CJ Stroud situation here.
Yeah, and I thought it was a little surprising because Case Keenum played so well versus Tennessee, and obviously had a great year a few years ago in Minnesota, led them to a deep playoff run. But the model has some slight value. We didn't go with the full 5-point flip. We flipped more 3.5 points because Cleveland's defense, as good as it is not as good on the road. And more importantly, Cleveland did not run the ball well against Chicago. And Houston, without Will Anderson, really shut down Tennessee and Derrick Henry. So that edge on the ground may not materialize. Devin Singletary has been great as he took over the lead role for Houston. So I think that that we still have, but we would lean Houston in this case. Plus, as big a Flacco fan as I am, that win against the Bears had a lot more to do with what the Bears didn't do, especially dropping the ball on the Hail Mary. But even before that Hail Mary, that had a lot more to do with what the Bears messed up as opposed to what Flacco did.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that, let's move to this Buffalo team who it's hard to decide. Do people think Dallas was overrated, or did they really attribute that to Buffalo? Buffalo opened as 14-point favorites, I believe. Then it was bet down to, open as 9.5-point favorites, steamed to -14. And now we're settling in somewhere around 11.5, 12 here.
Yeah. So the look ahead line before Sunday's game was not just 9.5. And so I think that what happened was, Buffalo did impress and people were all over them, and the Chargers couldn't have been worse, obviously, but there's been the narrative of the fired coach and teams playing much better with the fired coach. I looked at it. I don't know anything about GIF Smith. I don't know if it's GIF, like a GIF or whatever, but I assume it's GIF.
I have a hard time believing it's GIF.
He's the outside linebacker coach. And to me, that's important because that's Khalil Mack's coach. And Khalil Mack's had a great year. So maybe he has the pulse of the team as far as players want him to not necessarily get the job, but be in a position to I assume that they picked him because of his ability to rally the team, at least the defense. So I think that's what kept the line come back from 2 touchdowns to just 11.5, 12.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's move to one more game we weren't able to talk about yet. The Giants on Christmas going to Philadelphia. The public is just all over Philly here. A lot of steam headed their way, but steam to the under as well.
Yeah, I think that there's a belief that after 3 bad losses by Philly, sorry, Mackenzie, that it's gotta swing the other way. The bad pun is DeVito. He likes home cooking, right? He talks about his cutlets and his mom's cooking, lives at home. But in 3 road games, he had a good game at Washington, but Washington's defense is by far the worst in the league. They allow 3 more points than the second worst team. But in the other 3 road games, he has just 3 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. He's 175, 86, and 177 passing yards. So the Eagles secondary is getting cooked. I mean, they were doing an okay job for most of the Seattle game until that last drive. But I don't think there's not a lot of faith that DeVito and that team on the road will be able to do what other teams have done against Philly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Derek saying how Tommy DeVito tied for 5th most times sacked by QB in first 5 starts. And you got some big boys in Jalen Carter and the Georgia Bulldogs over there. So we'll see how that goes for him. Mm-hmm. All right. I see one more question we'll take before we head out of here, going back to the NBA quick. We talked about Miles Bridges. Not a ton of value on him, but we haven't looked at Brunson. So let's take a quick look at that.
Yeah. Okay. Brunson. We always, for some reason,
don't give him enough credit.
We're always fading Brunson. Yeah. And I guess it's because he plays better in these marquee matchups, right? In the Laker game, he had a huge game. Phoenix 50. And so, yeah, he seems to be.
Let's see if Jake has anything to say about it. Some Moose had something to say too, but
Yeah,
Jake.
Moose got out of the way. He saw he was about to go on camera. He said, "Nah, not today." I mean, Brunson's been really hot, but so I saw that RJ Barrett, if you want to fade someone, has been really bad in his career against Bridges. So maybe that's a fade spot. I think his points was at 17.5. I don't know what he's projected for. Steven, can you check real quick?
You know what it is in the model is obviously New York and Brooklyn are both New York City. And Brooklyn's defense at home, they allow 109 versus 121 on the road. So it's baking that strong defense, a 34% three-point percentage allowed at home by Brooklyn as the reason why Brunson is not, shooting as well as he would have otherwise. So, but then you can argue, well, is this really a New York road game? I'm not sure back when I was in New York, Brooklyn was, you never go to Brooklyn, but now it's cool. So I don't know what the fan base is going to be like as far as Knicks versus Nets fans.
I think it'd be pretty split.
Yeah. So maybe if there's something about crowd noise from Brooklyn, I don't, that's more of a college basketball thing.
Yeah. Like Providence.
Yeah. Providence, they're wagging at home.
Yeah. All right. I think
that's the way they ran yesterday. Providence at home, John Morant in his first game of the season. Notes to self going forward.
Those are our biggest lessons of yesterday. Providence at home, John Morant debuts. And honestly, who knows the next thing he'll do? He'll probably have to make another debut again in some recent future. All right. That's all I see for questions. That's all we have time for today as well, but lots of good information today. Good luck with your bets tonight. Reach out to us, as always, on Twitter with any questions, and we will see you guys tomorrow.